Hey, it's Joel from The Hack Life, and I'm here with Jenny Sansouci. She is a health coach and the author and writer of Rebels Apothecary. And Jenny, this is a fantastic book. I want to just tell you. I mean, we're going to get into that later. This book, I started following you a long time ago, and then I saw you wrote this book specifically about CBD and cannabis and medicinal mushrooms in response to your father and pancreatic cancer. So I can't wait to talk to you. But first, as a lot of times I like to do, I almost like to Tarantino this. So I'm curious, how, going back to when you first started, what was the day that you realized, I want to be a health coach?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I really appreciate your enthusiasm around the book. It's very refreshing, so
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So that's a funny question because I actually never really set out to become a health coach. I had started a blog and I was writing about nutrition and wellness, and I was really into Julia Cameron, The Artist's Way. I don't know if you're familiar with The Artist's Way, but it's a book about basically reawakening your creativity. And I was super into it. And I was going through the Artist's Way program, and I had gone to a workshop with her, and I wanted to see her talk live. And so I looked up Julia Cameron, The Artist's Way, and she was speaking at the school called the Institute for Integrative Nutrition in New York City, and it was open to the public. So I went to see her to learn more about, creativity and writing. And at the end of the presentation, they talked a little bit about this program, this health coach training program. And since I was already really interested in nutrition and wellness, I thought, I'm going to have a lot more to write about if I go through a program and get some credentials and actually get certified through, this school, than rather than just me Googling things and, reading things on Wikipedia and reading books. So, after I heard about the program, I had met some people that went through it, and I just started to look more into it, and I enrolled a couple of weeks later. But it was all kind of for my writing. And then I started health coaching after that a little bit, just because once you go through that program, you can basically, they teach you everything about health coaching and starting a health coaching business. So I just naturally started doing that too.
Wow, that's amazing. So it actually started out just, organically because you wanted to be a writer.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah.
you just found so much passion, surrounding health coaching and writing.
Yep.
The
Yep.
serendipitous thing about this all is that you've come full circle because you just wrote a book.
Yes. Yes. It is kind of a full circle moment there for sure.
And this book is amazing because it blends your two strengths, which is health, this knowledge of nutrition and health coaching, and your writing skill. So so
Thank you.
so talk to us about that, and why did you write this book, Rebels Apothecary?
Well, the book actually stemmed. I never planned to write this book. I always wanted to write a book, but I would always tell people, I'm not going to write a book just to write a book. I'm going to write a book when there's no choice. The topic just needs to be written, and it needs to be written by me. I didn't want to just write a general wellness book. I wanted it to be like, I cannot not write this. This has to be written. And that all stemmed from my dad getting pancreatic cancer, stage 4 pancreatic cancer in 2017. He was diagnosed. And that was obviously a big shock to my family and myself. And that up until that point, I had, cared a lot about nutrition and wellness, for my own experimentation and just for spreading the word about what I believe to be healthy, through my blog. But it never felt so serious before.
Yeah.
And when my dad got diagnosed, it became this moment where I knew, okay, all the work that I've done leading up to this point is so I can help him. I just had that knowingness. I have to do something to help him. And I didn't know what that was going to be. I didn't know if it was going to be a diet that I tried to get him on, or if it was going to be supplements or some type of healing modality. I wasn't sure, but I knew that I was going to do as much research as I could to figure out what might help him. I knew nothing about cancer at the time. I knew nothing about chemotherapy. I was not about to, suggest that he don't do chemotherapy. I know, and if people choose to not do it, that's totally cool. But I knew that my dad was going to go the conventional route. And so I thought, all right, I'm just going to support him whatever way I can. I'm going to make some phone calls and, talk to some functional medicine doctors and see what they recommend and just see what I can do. And the more I started to look into it and asked around and did some research, cannabis and CBD and THC, primarily, and medicinal mushrooms were the things that I kept hearing over and over. And the more I dug into the research, the more I found showing that people are using cannabis and medicinal mushrooms not only for, to potentially help with the cancer, which I always say, I'm not a doctor and I can't say that it's going to help with cancer, but a lot of people are using it for the side effects of chemotherapy, which can be really debilitating. So those two things just kept popping up, and we started on a protocol with those things, and he's been doing really, really well. So I didn't really branch out too much more. We didn't, do any type of juice cleanse or, any other protocol that some people do for cancer. We just stuck with the cannabis and mushrooms, and he was really open to it. And it's easy for him because he just has to add things in.
Yeah.
We didn't put him on anything where he's like, taking out everything he's normally doing. There's a few things diet-wise that he did change majorly, but aside from that, what I realized really quickly is that when you're on chemotherapy, you typically lose your appetite. So it's hard to, and foods don't taste the same as they used to. So it's hard for a lot of cancer patients to go on a really strict diet. And, some people can, and that's wonderful, but you also have to make sure the patient's not losing too much weight and give them and, allow them to kind of eat what they can to fuel themselves while adding in these extra things. That's been our protocol, at least. So that's sort of how it all came to be. But the book itself, I didn't, like I said, I didn't plan on writing this book. I actually had a book agent reach out to me to ask if I would write this book because I was blogging about it, and she had read, one of my friends had sent her my blog, and she was reading the blog post that I wrote about medicinal mushrooms, about cannabis and my dad's journey. And she said, there's a book here. Would you be interested? And I was like, how can I say no to that? If this information can get out to more people, then I need to do it. So that's kind of how it started.
I love it. And there's just so much to unpack there, and I love how you said, it's like I was a health coach, and it's almost like these things. I'm a health coach as well, and so it's like, I know these things that people should do, and these are probably healthy for you. But then when it actually is for your family, it just completely changes like the tempo and like the gravity of what's on the line,
Totally. Yeah. And I'm sure if I had cancer, I would be way more open to doing something super strict and, some really radical change, just because I like that stuff. And it sounds like you probably like that stuff too. But my dad is more, like he has his habits, he has his ways, and he's open to a lot of things. And I think when you have someone in your family that has a diagnosis like that, you really have to make sure they're really comfortable with the plan, or else they won't stick to it.
So good. And it's funny, I went to this training, this neuromuscular re-education training with this electric stim device. Yeah, fancy. And it's funny because the trainer, my mentor, I asked him, okay, so you get people better after they come see you, and then I said, well, what other work we prescribe them? Like, what homework do we give them? Like a lacrosse ball and do this? And he said, nothing. And it blew my mind. I'm like, what? And he's like, listen, man. He's like, I've been doing this for a while, and the fact of the matter is, most people don't do the homework. They might do it for a week or two, but then they stop. And so it just made me think when you said with your dad, and just, to radically change someone's diet, and, oh, the ketogenic diet is supposed to be good for cancer. Maybe. But then also the willingness of the patient. You have to feel that person out. Like, what's their mental state, and can they, like you said, you and I are much more open to those things.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to, because enjoying your life is really important too, especially when you're faced with that kind of diagnosis and you just don't know how it's going to turn out. You really want to have a as good of an attitude as possible. So you want to make sure that whatever changes you're making are doable, and that the person is, really on board.
Yeah. And just one more thing to add to that, for people that get the book, you absolutely should get the book. There is a great chapter towards, I think, the very end, where your dad actually writes a chapter, and it's amazing.
Hmm.
It's uplifting,
Thank you.
and I'm glad you did that. And and I've seen pictures of him, and so when you see the pictures of him and like the levity in him and like how well he is doing, coupled with the
Mm.
writing, it's very powerful. And
Thank you. Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts of the book for
yeah,
sure.
so let's get a little bit into, cannabis and the endocannabinoid system. I remember reading a while back that we've always had this endocannabinoid system, and that was new for me. I had no idea that existed, and it was
Mhm.
interesting when I was reading your book that, hey, we've been using cannabis and tinctures and CBD, it sounds like, in the early 1800s, and then all of a sudden,
Mm.
like, that kind of medical, that like ancient wisdom went away in the 19, I think, 70s was when, or the war on
Yeah.
drugs came, and it was
Hmm.
really sad to hear. But so can you talk about, you do a really wonderful job of explaining and breaking down the ECS, the endocannabinoid system, and just how this lock and key system works?
Sure. Yeah. So we have the system in our bodies that actually has receptors that interact with the cannabis plant directly. And it's not the system isn't there just for the cannabis plant. We have our own natural molecules that are similar to the molecules in the cannabis plant that regulate so many things throughout the body and just keep us in homeostasis or balance. So it regulates mood, the immune system, pain, inflammation, lots of things are regulated by this ECS. And the receptors that we have, so we have our natural endocannabinoids, which endo means within the body, and phytocannabinoids, phyto means plant. So those are the ones that come from the cannabis plant. But these endocannabinoids that we have are molecules that are generated naturally in response to pain and inflammation and things like that. So we make our own endocannabinoids. So what happens when we consume cannabis? So THC and CBD work a little bit differently with this system. THC actually binds to the same receptors as our natural inner molecules and mimics them. So it can kind of give us that pain regulation, that mood boost, that reduction in inflammation that would happen naturally.
Ah,
CBD doesn't directly bind to the receptors, but it can block the enzymes that destroy our natural cannabinoids, our inner molecules, which means those are upregulated. So there's higher levels in the body circulating naturally. So they work a little bit differently, but they all the compounds in the cannabis plant interact with this system that is designed to receive these molecules, which is really, really amazing. And I mean, most people don't know about it. I mean, it's
yeah.
starting to become more well known now, but it was just in the 90s that they started to figure all of this out.
Yeah, now it's unfortunate. It seems like now a lot of, the FDA and other people are trying to kind of step in and, form their own isolations, if you will, instead of just letting this natural plant medicine that we've had. And you've just seen so
Mm.
many people, it's been difficult for them to even sell CBD.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, it's completely unregulated right now, the CBD market. So the FDA is, I mean, there will be more regulations coming, but it is a really weird kind of gray area right now where um, you don't really know what you're getting unless you do some digging.
So perfect. If you had to kind of just in like, and you did a wonderful job, but if you had to just kind of THC versus CBD, like in a very simple terms for
Mm.
people, it's funny because someone just asked me
Yeah.
that too. Like, can you ask her to explain like just CBD, THC, what's like the biggest difference and I guess how they work?
Sure. So THC is the molecule in the CBD and THC are the two most prevalent compounds within the cannabis plant. There's hundreds of others, but THC is the one that gets you high. That's
Got
the
it.
the psychoactive molecule in cannabis. So if you're thinking about like smoking weed and what you normally would think of getting high, that's the THC. CBD is another molecule in the plant that does not get you high but has a lot of therapeutic benefits. So that's
Nice.
the main difference is the THC is the psychoactive molecule, the CBD is the more, protective molecule,
Yes.
and they both have their own therapeutic effects, but the higher the CBD in a product that you're getting, the less likely you'll feel a high.
Okay. Cool. And then what about strains? You talk about a lot about strains in the book. I'm not too familiar with whatever it is, purple
Hmm.
Kush and silver blaze and strawberry, whatever. Can you talk about just a little bit about why the strains matter?
Yeah. So, the strains, what it really refers to is just the different compounds within the plant. So different strains of cannabis, and there are strains that are very high CBD and really, really low THC. And so people are always really surprised when I show them like a cannabis flower, which it basically is weed, what you think of when you see like the green
Yeah.
buds. And I'm like, this is CBD. They're like, that's CBD? Like, I thought that was weed. And I'm like, yes, but it's just a strain of the plant that's bred for very, very high CBD. So the differences in all the different strains are not only the level of THC and CBD, but the level of other cannabinoids. There's a bunch of minor cannabinoids that all have their own effects. And then there's terpenes and flavonoids. So there's all these different compounds within the cannabis plant that do different things to the body. And so each strain has a different profile of these compounds. So once you get to know the different compounds, then if you're at a dispensary that has a multitude of strains, you can look at the profile and say, okay, this one's probably going to be a little bit more uplifting. This one might be a little bit more sedating, depending on the different compounds that are in the strain.
So if you go into like some kind of dispensary, the strains might matter, I guess, in terms if you're just trying to look at maybe a problem. That's the easiest way I can think of explaining it. Like a problem you're trying to solve, whether it's like, hey, I have pain, or I may want a pain for strain. I'm sorry, I may want a strain specifically for pain, or maybe I want a different type of strain if it's for anxiety. Right? Would that be okay?
Right. Yeah, and right now, I mean, in California, you guys have it. You're really lucky out there because you have the dispensaries out there have amazing varieties of products, strains, ratios of CBD to THC. Most of the rest of the country hasn't caught up. I mean, Colorado has some really great stuff, but at some point, I think federally this will be legal, and we will have access to all of these different arrays of strains. But the bud tender, which is the person that works at the dispensary, should be able to tell you this one's really high in limonene, for instance, which is an uplifting terpene, or this one's high in myrcene, which is more of a sedating. So like the indica sativa thing. Sativa, people think of sativa strains as more uplifting and indica strains as more sedating, and that's because of the terpenes in the strain. So higher in myrcene is usually more of an indica direction, and less myrcene. That's kind of thought of as the one that dictates the difference there. So yeah, you want to just talk to the person that works at the dispensary and see if they have the different profiles of the compounds within the strains. But when we're talking about just CBD that you can like buy at a health food store, you don't really have to worry about that. You're not going to have a lot of options right now. So that isn't as important as just making sure you're getting a product that is a full spectrum product, which means that all the different compounds within the plant are represented, even if it's in very small amounts, like THC. In a tiny, tiny amount, it's important to have that in your CBD product because they all work together to boost each other up. It's called the Entourage Effect. So you want to make sure that you're getting full spectrum and that it's lab tested, and that you see that there's no, heavy metals, solvents, and other chemicals, present in the strain. You want to make sure that you see a lab test that shows that.
Okay, very cool. Talk about the Entourage Effect, and could you just briefly talk about and then go into the Entourage Effect and why you think it's important, but talk about, and what I love how you broke down was isolate, full spectrum, and broad spectrum. So if you kind of talk about the different, because people are going to go, basically you can go out and buy different forms of these. These are the 3 ones that you explained in the book, and you can go out and buy them. But like you said, you think probably the better one is the full spectrum due to the Entourage Effect.
Right. So full spectrum, basically full spectrum is typically a product that has all of the compounds present, or at least a bunch of the compounds present. You want to, the Entourage Effect, all of these compounds, like I said, boost each other up, which is really what plant medicine is. It's using the whole plant as a synergistic effect rather than taking an isolated molecule out of the plant, which is what pharmaceuticals are, is just isolated molecules. Now, there's a place for those, of course. It's easy to standardize them. Sometimes the isolated molecule is better. With the case for CBD, it's been shown that a full spectrum product is more effective than an isolate. You have to take a lot more of an isolate to get the same effect. An isolate meaning just a single molecule CBD product. So broad spectrum is basically like full spectrum without the THC. So if you really want to avoid THC for any reason, I would choose broad spectrum. So if you're, in sober recovery, or you can't, have THC show up on a drug test, or you're just like, I do not want to feel any type of chance that I'll feel a little bit of a high from the THC, I'm completely not okay with that. Take a broad spectrum. That's what I would suggest. An isolate can be useful, and some people do have good experiences with it. But if you're one of those people that says, I tried CBD and nothing happened, if you took an isolate, that could potentially be why. So if that's the case, then I would at least move to a broad spectrum and see how that works.
Yeah, I love that. It seems like, to me, and I'm sure for you too, like nature, there's a reason why the entourage effect, there's a reason why that happens. And it's like Mother Nature knew this. We destroy things by trying to make these isolates, and it just doesn't have the same effect. However, I do like how you answered it, because I constantly get asked, Joel, if I take this, am I gonna show up on a drug test? If I take CBD, that's the most common question I get when it comes to CBD. Hey, are we allowed to take it? I don't know. I don't want to show up on a drug test. So
yeah, and that's a great question. So for people that are worried about it showing up on a drug test, I would not even mess with a full spectrum CBD product, even because the amount of THC is very, very small, but it's still there and could potentially show up on a drug test. So if you're wanting to try CBD and not have any THC, go for the broad spectrum product and get a lab test and make sure it says, 0 on the THC line if you're going to have a problem with it showing up on a drug test, because it could.
Okay, cool. And then, also you do a wonderful job talking about cooking with cannabis. What's like your favorite way to cook with cannabis?
Yeah, it's so funny. So while I was writing the book and doing the research for the book, I was using CBD in my food and my coffees and stuff, but I had never infused the actual buds into food. And that's, one of the things that I've learned from people that have been cooking with cannabis for it's typically been cooked for high THC, to get you as high as possible. That's what they do. They infuse the actual buds into butter or oil and then put them into foods. So I did that with high CBD strains for the book. And I mean, people can use the recipes in the book with high THC strains if they want to, but I don't use high THC strains. So I'm only interested in the high CBD ones. And so you take the flower, which is just the raw cannabis buds, and that are high CBD, and you can infuse them into butter or coconut oil or olive oil, and then just use that in any way that you would normally use those things. You don't want to go too high heat. So if you're sauteing or something, you want to do it on low heat, just because some of the cannabinoids and terpenes can be destroyed at high temperatures, but it's really good for baked goods. So I use a CBD infused butter, and I make these like grain-free chocolate chip cookies, and I have a blueberry version too. So I use it in cookies. That recipe is in the book. And then, you can basically use it wherever you would normally use a cooking fat.
Yeah. So what you like to do is basically make it like a carrier oil, and then just use that to infuse whatever you're doing. That's probably the easiest way for most people to do it. And then, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, probably the easiest way, if people really want to put it into their food, would be to just take their CBD oil tincture and add it into your food. That's the easiest. But if you really want to get intimately acquainted with how to infuse cannabis into your food, you can infuse your cooking fats, and it's a really fun thing to do. I will say though, and I mean, I mentioned this in the book, but edibles and eating your cannabis medicine isn't the most bioavailable way to get accurate dosing, meaning like it's going to pass through your digestion, and everybody has a different digestive system. So it's hard to measure exactly how much you're getting. So if you just want to do it to just add some extra, CBD into your life and have some fun with it, it's great. If you really want to be accurate on your dosing, I would use a different method.
Very cool. Let's switch gears really quick, Jenny. You had a great chapter that I think a lot of women are going to find valuable. So tell me, Jenny, how do you hack menstrual cramps?
That's a great question. That is actually one of the most profound differences I've experienced with using cannabis, and specifically using a high THC product. Like I said, I don't use high THC products internally because I don't like to have the feeling of getting high. But with pain, THC can be really, really helpful. So one of my friends gave me, really early on in my research, she gave me these cannabis suppositories. So you insert them, and they're from this company called Foria, and they make high THC suppositories and high CBD ones, because the high CBD ones are legal federally. The high THC ones you can only get at dispensaries. And I've been taking Advil all my life for cramps, and I get really, really bad cramps. So I was really skeptical. I was like, listen, I'm a believer in cannabis, but I don't think even this will tackle how bad my cramps are. And when I used it, and it was like within 15 minutes, my cramps were gone. And so this was like probably 60 milligrams of THC. And I believe it was a 1-to-1 ratio. Right? Yeah, it's a very high amount of THC. If you took that internally, you would be very high. But it worked really, really well. So for me, for cramps, I use a combination of those suppositories with a topical and a tincture. So I'll use a topical just like kind of on my abdomen area, and I'll take a tincture just to, the tincture can really help to calm anxiety, and it can help with pain too. But a combination of a few different things works for me, definitely just as well as Advil.
That's so cool, because just so many people are suffer from that, and they're looking for an answer, and it's like, Advil's not the answer. I mean, we know that it can, those kind of things can wreck your liver, and someone like you as a health coach, I know you wouldn't want to do that if there was some better alternative. So
I mean, listen, I'm not no saint. I take Advil sometimes, but if I have the cannabis products, the array of cannabis products available, I will always use those for sure.
In terms of pain too, you mentioned that your dad, he was suffering from some joint pain and arthritis pain, and that he was actually, taking, I think he was using an actual cream, correct?
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, his first experience with CBD really working for him, this was before we got him the THC stuff the high THC stuff that he's taking now. But we originally only had access to CBD products. So when we first got into this, I had him start to take some CBD capsules. So he's probably taking about 100 milligrams of CBD per day in capsules. And what he noticed right off the bat is that his joint pain went away. And, he's been an athlete his whole life, so he has all these aches and pains. And so walking up and down the stairs, he would always kind of have these little pains that would happen. And he realized, like, I don't have those pains anymore just from taking the CBD. And so he stopped taking Advil too. He was taking Advil every day for these pains. So both of us kind of had these before and after Advil moments with CBD, which was, and pain is one of those things you can really see a before and after with this kind of thing. Because, there's other things you can take supplements here and there, and you don't know exactly, is it working, is it not? But pain is something that just affects every moment of your life if you're in pain. So it's really clear if something takes away the pain. So CBD for sure did that for both of us.
And he was just taking capsules.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How long do you think, because I'm sure everyone's wondering, well, okay, well, how long do I have to wait before I stop feeling pain? Was it a month for him, or do you kind of remember, or does he remember?
Yeah, it was around 2 weeks. I think it was about 2 weeks after he started taking it every day that he noticed that he really didn't have those pains anymore. Yeah.
That's quick. That's a quick turnaround.
That's kind of typical with any cannabis product. If it's something with THC in it, you're gonna feel the mental effects pretty pretty quickly. But with CBD, some people feel it the first time they take it. Some people need to kind of take a few days to get your system acclimated to the CBD and the cannabis medicine, and then you start to feel the effects. But it's really different for everybody because, we were talking about this endocannabinoid system that we all have, and everybody's is different. So you may have a high level of these natural endocannabinoids going through your system. Maybe I don't. So we were affected by CBD differently. So I just really suggest, if people are wanting to experiment, to try different products, try different dosages, and try different methods of delivery, and try it for a few weeks before you decide, oh, it didn't do anything for me, because you might just need a little time and you might need to adjust your dose.
Perfect. I mean, and just because I was going to ask that, actually, for me, I've tried a full spectrum CBD, a tincture, which is, I believe, 25 milligrams, and I didn't feel anything. Then, and in my experience from just doing supplements and whatever tinctures and other type of healthy modalities, I feel like I'm the kind of person who just needs larger doses. I tend to not feel that. So for someone like me or anybody else who when you're not feeling, oh, I took 25 milligrams, I'm not feeling anything, is that something where you think, okay, Joel, is there like an onboarding stage where like I need to be consistently taking this over a month time to kind of start noticing the effects? Or is it just
Yeah.
maybe I need to try higher dosages or different strains? I mean, there's just so many different ways you can go. Or would you just
Yeah, I
say,
would
yes,
say,
Joel, all of the above?
yeah, I mean, kind of all of the above, but it really depends on what kind of relief you're looking for. That's the other thing. Everybody that takes a cannabis product is looking for something different. So I would make sure you have a benchmark to how will you know if it worked? Like, are you taking other things along with it? Are you trying it like in a smoothie with a ton of other superfoods, and then you're like, oh, it didn't do anything? But
Yeah.
so I would recommend take it by itself. Don't take it with any other supplements. Take the same dose for a couple of days at least. Like if you're taking 25 milligrams and you're trying to use it for anxiety or sleep, let's say, take it for a few days. If you still don't feel anything after a few days, then start to up your dose a little bit. So you can up it by maybe 5 or 10 more milligrams and see if that does anything. And then continue to up your dose, because some people need like 50 milligrams where some need 10. So you want to keep experimenting with it and don't give up just because 25 milligrams didn't do anything for you, and try different products, and make sure you're looking at the lab tests, because a lot of CBD products will say they have 25 milligrams, but then when you look at the lab test, it's like 2 milligrams, that it's just so unregulated. So you really want to make sure that what it says on the label is actually what you're taking.
Perfect. So I was just going to ask that. So if you're looking, if you were to walk into a dispensary or you're looking online and you're going to, how do you just like decipher what is a good product and what is not? Are you like third party tested, lab tested? What are some key components you're looking for?
Yeah. So for me, I always look for a full spectrum product. If it's a CBD product, I'm always looking for a full spectrum, and then looking at a third party lab test, which, yes, it means that another company did the test. So it's not just, the company that makes a CBD product reporting these things. It's an actual third party company that did the testing. And I always check the levels of CBD, the levels of THC, because, some people want more THC, some don't. So you want to make sure that whatever it says on the label matches the lab test. And then, make sure that, again, like I said before, that it's tested for heavy metals and pesticides and things like that. And it's a clean product. So those are the two things that I would make sure to look for.
And then anything as far, could you just like tell the audience, like what are some brands that you like to use?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you're going to find different brands in, like I said, at a dispensary in California versus what you can buy online. So some of the CBD products that are federally legal that I really like, there's a company called Rebels, which is the first CBD product that I ever tried. And that really helped me with anxiety and sleep. It was just the first one I tried. And it was the first time that I, realized what CBD could do. There's a company called Lazarus Naturals that I really like that you can also get online. My dad takes a brand called Wildflower. That was one of the first brands that I found in New York City at a place called the Alchemist Kitchen, which is amazing. They have great brands. Charlotte's Web is a good brand, and they're very widely known.
Yeah, I've heard of
Those are all lab. I've looked at all of their lab tests, and they do what they say they're doing. So those are some good ones. As far as what you can get at dispensaries, if you do have access to a dispensary, there's a company called Mary's Medicinals that makes really amazing topicals. I broke my tailbone a few years ago, and I still have some pain if I sit for too long. And so there's a 1-to-1 THC to CBD ratio compound by Mary's Medicinals, and it takes away my tailbone pain very quickly.
Wow.
That's amazing. And then Foria is a really good brand that you can find those suppositories at dispensaries, or the CBD ones you can buy online. Foria also has, it's Foria. They also have a broad spectrum product. So if you're looking for a broad spectrum CBD product that has some of the other compounds but no THC, that's a good brand to check out.
Thank you so much. That was great. And then what about sleep? You mentioned sleep. What issues were you having with sleep, and what did you notice like drastically? Do you use an Aura ring or anything to like check your sleep, or was it just, anecdotal that you just noticed like, wow, I can't believe.
Yeah, at the time so the thing about CBD, so THC can sometimes be a little sedating for people. Unless you take too much THC, then it can kind of stimulate your mind a lot. CBD isn't actually sedating on its own, but a lot of people, when they have trouble sleeping, it's because of anxiety or, racing thoughts or pain. So what CBD can really help with is to kind of mitigate those reasons that you're having trouble sleeping. So it's not like a sleeping pill where it's just going to knock you out, but it can help so much with anxiety. And that's where a lot of the racing thoughts come from. And that's why I was having trouble sleeping, because I was just thinking. I was just like laying awake, going over, everything I had to do, or, just like ruminating.
Jenny, who does that nowadays?
Yeah. I know. Yeah. Right. And my body was like on alert, kind of in this like cortisol fight or flight mode in my nervous system, where I was like, I know there's nothing wrong right now, but my body just will not go to sleep, will not relax. I feel like I'm on edge. And that's what CBD did for me. When I took the CBD, I just felt like my body was able to actually relax, and I wasn't on edge so much, and my thoughts weren't racing so much, and I was able to just relax into sleep. So I have a CBD tincture that I keep next to my bed. I take it before bed, but usually it lasts only about 4 to 6 hours, and sometimes I'll wake up again and I'll take more if I wake up in the middle of the night.
And it puts you right back to sleep.
Yeah. And some people like to do a combo, because if you take a capsule or an edible, it takes longer to kick in, but it lasts a little bit longer. The tincture is quicker the onset is quicker, but it can wear off a little bit faster. So if you take a little bit of a tincture to fall asleep and then a capsule or an edible to help you stay asleep longer, then that can really be a sweet spot.
Is there anything in terms of like tinctures that do you take daily just to like for maintenance?
Yeah, well, I take a tincture every night before bed. Sometimes I'll take it in the morning, but usually it chills me out so much. It like just relaxes me so much that sometimes it's hard for me to be productive when I take it. But some people will take very small amounts of CBD, like 5 milligrams or 10 milligrams, and it does help them focus. So, you gotta experiment a little bit with it, but taking a little bit of CBD, especially if I'm anxious during the day, I'll take a little bit of CBD just to kind of calm down that anxiety, but not so much that it's like super relaxing me.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And then just in terms of, you mentioned there's various ways to ingest cannabis. You can ingest it like we were talking about, edibles or food. Then there's inhalation. You could do the tinctures. You could do the creams on the skin. Why would you do one versus the other?
Yeah, so inhalation is the one that people are most familiar with because it's smoking and vaping.
Yeah.
That's the quickest. So if you want really quick relief, that is why people would go with inhalation.
Sure.
But of course, smoking can be irritating to the lungs, and there's a lot of issues with vaping. Many of the cannabis doctors that I spoke with to research this book, they recommend dry herb vaping, which is vaping not with oils, not with the vape oils, but with the actual flower, the cannabis buds. You put them into this vape cartridge, and it will heat up the cannabis enough to get the vaporization, but not to the smoking point. So there's not as much irritation to the lungs. So that's something, if you do want to, use inhalation, that's what I would recommend. With the tincture is, it usually takes about 15 to 20 minutes to kick in. Can you still hear me? Because your screen is black.
No, I can hear it. I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. I can't see you anymore. So
I don't know what happened to me. I'm here.
Okay. So let me restart that. So with a tincture, that takes usually about 15 minutes to kick in and can last, about 4 to 6 hours. A tincture is really, really good if you want to get accurate dosing, and you're going to, put it under your tongue. You know exactly how much you're taking and exactly how much is being, roughly absorbed into the body. Edibles and capsules, they, like I said, they go through the digestive system, so they aren't as quick to kick in, and the dosing can be a little bit, different depending on, how much is absorbed through your digestion and how much isn't. So those people like to take because they last a little bit longer than the tincture, like I said. So if you're taking it before sleep, that could be something, or for pain, that can be really helpful if you have pain while you're sleeping to have it orally. Topicals are really good for pain and just relaxation in general. There's lots of CBD massage oils and topicals that are geared towards pain. So there's a different method for everybody, and for every, whatever ailment you're hoping to relieve. You may have to try a few different methods of delivery before you find the right one.
I love it. Thank you. And then, kind of following up here, kind of our discussion of which is cannabis. Can you tell everybody, the audience, what is Rick Simpson oil? I've never heard of this, but this would be like a real game changer for your dad.
Yeah. So Rick Simpson oil is a really high potency cannabis oil. There's a guy named Rick Simpson who this was inspired by, and he used this oil to treat his skin cancer. And it's the one that he originally came up with is a very high THC oil. The one that my dad takes and the one that most of the cannabis doctors I have spoken to recommend is a 1-to-1 ratio of CBD to THC, but it's so highly concentrated that there could be, 50 milligrams of THC in one drop, the size of a grain of rice.
Wow.
But it's so highly concentrated that it helps so much for cancer patients with nausea, with appetite, with pain, with sleep. It's really, really game changing for a lot of people, not only for potentially helping with the cancer potentially, but really for the side effects for sure. That has taken away all of my dad's nausea.
Wow.
It helps him sleep better. He got his appetite back. He eats full meals now. And I mean, at first, before we got him on the Rick Simpson oil, he would just look at food and be like, I have no appetite. Wow. I can't do this. And he would be nauseous. And so when he got on the Rick Simpson oil, and it's not a recreational product, it's a really, really medicinal product. And you take these tiny, tiny droplets to get these high levels of cannabis into your system, and he takes it every day, and you get used to it. So yes, of course, you're going to feel a little bit high if you take this product, but if you kind of work your way up really slowly, you can develop a tolerance to it, and you can get to a point where it doesn't impair your day too much. But again, like this is for more serious conditions that people take this for.
And then Jenny, I was just thinking as we're talking, your dad has stage 4 pancreatic cancer. If someone were to get that today, that's pretty much like a death sentence, is it not? I mean, that's like it's, and I mean, he's thriving. I mean, do we know kind of, obviously you're not a doctor, you can't prescribe, treat, or diagnose anybody, but what's some of the science or some of the beliefs that we think that the cannabis and that the endocannabinoid system is actually doing to help cancer patients? Is it just that, what do you think? Is it just is it because it takes them out of this fight or flight state that they're able to heal better, or is there something else going on? I don't know.
Well, that's a good question. I think it's probably a combination of a lot of things, but it has been shown that the cannabis can kill cancer cells in the lab. We don't have clinical trials for this yet because of the legalization of cannabis. And until it's federally legal, we can't get proper clinical trials. But in the lab, it has been shown that it can kill cancer cells. So Yeah, again, like I said, I'll say it again, but I'm not a doctor, so
Right.
I'm not going to tell people to take it. But if I had cancer, I would absolutely be, I mean, and I think there's the anxiety lowering properties of it, the pain relieving properties of it, the anti-nausea properties, the
Yeah.
anti-inflammatory properties, and just the fact that, there's these receptors all throughout the immune system too, to help keep us in homeostasis. So some cannabis experts say that having these cannabis compounds in our system could be playing a role in modulating the immune system, just keeping it strong and in
Yeah.
balance, so, and that has, of course, has a lot to do with cancer, the immune system, keeping your immune system well balanced. So I think it's really a combination of a lot of things. And for the side effects, it's totally a game changer if you do go the
Yeah.
chemotherapy route. But I would definitely get on some type of medicinal cannabis product. The Rick Simpson oil has been a game changer for a lot of cancer patients. If you don't have access to medical products, then CBD is great, just to get some full spectrum CBD into your system. And then medicinal mushrooms, that's been the other
Yes.
major part of the plan.
All right, great. Okay, amazing. Let's talk about medicinal mushrooms, and I think we got a great idea about how cannabis is helping modulate the immune system. Talk to me about medicinal mushrooms and why you found this also to be a great entourage effect, if you will, or synergistic effect with cannabis in fighting cancer.
Yeah, so the medicinal mushrooms, like I said, were the other thing besides cannabis that just kept coming up when I was talking to people and asking people for advice about this and what we should do. The medicinal mushrooms, people kept saying, all different kinds of medicinal mushrooms, chaga, reishi. So I guess I should first, when I say medicinal mushrooms, I should clarify, because a lot of people think of mushrooms as either like the white button mushrooms that
Yep.
you see at the grocery store, portobello mushrooms, or psychedelic mushrooms. And
Right.
that's kind of the two places that you go.
Yeah.
And so people are always like, am I going to hallucinate if I take medicinal mushrooms, or are these button mushrooms medicinal? So, but there's this whole class of mushrooms that's considered medicinal mushrooms, that some of them are edible. Some of them you need to take in a tincture or powder form because of their texture.
Yeah.
But they have properties. All of them have different medicinal properties, but across the board, they all are really supportive to the immune system. So one of the things that all of these mushrooms have is it's called beta glucans, and they work directly with our immune system to activate our immune cells to make our immune system. They don't stimulate the immune system, but just like I was saying with cannabis, they can help to modulate the immune system. So if you have an overactive immune system, they can help to get it back into balance. And same if you have an underactive immune system. And of course, if you have an autoimmune condition or anything like that, you want to work with the doctor, but before you start any of these things. But across the board, they're all really, really powerful for the immune system. And there's lots of studies that show that. So what I think is happening with my dad, because chemotherapy can weaken the immune system so much that people just can't even tolerate it anymore. A lot of people, they say that people can die just from the chemotherapy drugs because their system just can't tolerate it. So, with my dad, his doctor said, usually people can tolerate about 8 to 10 rounds of this chemo before they need a break. My dad has done over 50 rounds of this very strong chemo, and he has been totally like vibrant and energetic the whole time. So my belief is that these medicinal mushrooms that he's taking are keeping his immune system strong enough to tolerate the chemotherapy. And, so he's been able to go through many rounds of treatment.
What are some of your favorite medicinal mushrooms? I have some of my favorites as well. I like there's a brand called Four Sigmatic that I really like,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a lot of their teas, and even my 6-year-old likes to drink them. So we'll have we have cordyceps, reishi, chaga we use for a lot of immunity, but reishi we understand to be powerful as like an adaptogen for I always think of it as stress and calming. So yeah, what are some of your favorites, and how do you like to ingest them or get access to them?
Yeah. So some of my favorites, reishi is awesome. One of my probably favorite mushroom is chaga.
Ooh.
That's a really good everyday mushroom. It's very high in antioxidants, really good for the immune system, and it's very neutral in taste, and I think it has a really pleasant taste. So I drink chaga tea a lot. Chaga is kind of one of those daily tonic mushrooms, meaning when I say tonic, meaning it's just kind of this daily thing that you can take to support your body. So I take chaga every day. Lion's mane is one of my favorites.
How do you take it, Jenny? How do you take the chaga?
Yeah, chaga, I'll make tea with it. Like I use Four Sigmatic products, which is, just a powder that you can mix into hot water. But I also, actually I have a piece of chaga here. I also use the actual piece of chaga, and you can simmer this in water for, 1 or 2 hours and get all the medicinal properties out of it into the water. I mean, some of the medicinal properties can only be extracted with alcohol, but a lot of them come out in water. So I'll make a tea out of that, or a tincture I'll take. There's a company called Catskill Fungi that I really like, and they do a double extraction, which means they extract the water soluble properties and the alcohol soluble properties from the mushroom and then combine them into a tincture. So if you really want, but Four Sigmatic does that as well. They do a double extraction before they make their mushrooms into a powder, because they want the compounds from both of those extractions. So yeah, tincture or a tea is the main things that I do. But you can also put the powders into a smoothie if that's easy. If you make a daily smoothie or put it into your coffee, that's another good way. And then there's other medicinal mushrooms that you can cook with.
Yeah, I've been really digging the chaga. I'm a big coffee guy, so I like the chaga. It has kind of that bitter like coffee taste. But to kind of take a little bit of the bitterness out, I'll throw in a little bit of the Beekeeper Naturals. They make a really nice honey, a bee-powered honey. And so I'll take just a little bit of that and I'll blend it up, and it's fantastic.
Ooh, yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, that sounds really good. Yeah, so chaga is a great one that I take, and then lion's mane is another awesome one that's really good for the brain and memory and cognition. So I take lion's mane if I'm going to sit down to write or work. My dad takes lion's mane. It really helps him with neuropathy, which is like loss of feeling in your fingers and toes, or a tingling feeling that can happen a lot with chemotherapy patients. And that has really helped with his neuropathy. So lion's mane is a really good one for the nerves in general.
For lion's mane, I've taken it, and again, I've never felt any kind of cognitive boost. Do you double the dosage, or does your dad and your dad as well? Does he just take one packet of the Four Sigmatics a day, or is he taking multiple, like double the dosage? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, so I've experienced effects that I can feel more with the lion's mane when I take a tincture.
Yeah.
And so I mean, maybe a combo. I mean, again, it's kind of like with the cannabis, you have to try and see what works for you. But I really like the powder products in a tea, but the tincture really works well for me. My dad takes it in capsule form, and I don't know exactly how much he takes per day, but it's around probably 2 grams of the lion's mane. And I mean, in the studies, they are typically using like 6 to 10 grams for like therapeutic doses of mushrooms, which is 3 times around the typical wellness maintenance dose. So yeah, I mean, I think with Four Sigmatic products, for instance, I think it's like 1.5 grams in one of those packets of mushrooms. So that's kind of like a wellness dose. But yeah, they're all fairly non-toxic and safe. Obviously, you want to make sure there's no drug interactions that you have before you take any supplements. But you can really experiment with the dosage with these mushrooms, and you're not going to have any type of intoxicating effects or anything like that. So it's one of those ones where you can really play with the dosing.
Very cool. Now, to kind of wrap things up, just to kind of end this and wrap things up, if you or another loved one, now knowing what you know now, if someone were to come to you and say, Jenny, I have cancer, I need your help, what would be the steps that you'd be what would be the systematic kind of, just in general overview, blueprint steps you'd be thinking about that you would address for this person, or some type of like protocol that you would be kind of thinking about?
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing that I always say is see if you can get a medical marijuana card, or see what the laws are in your state. See what kind of products you have access to. Get at least a full spectrum CBD oil. If you can't get access to a more potent medical product, if you do have access to medical dispensaries, go in there and talk to the people that work there, because they're very knowledgeable, and ask them what other people with your condition are taking. If you can get your hands on some type of Rick Simpson oil, that's a 1-to-1 ratio of CBD to THC. That is what a lot of people are doing. So that's a great place to start. But really getting those cannabinoids into your system in any way that you possibly can, of course, with your doctor's guidance. You want to make sure that someone is monitoring you and your progress and making sure it's all good. And then I would get on a blend of medicinal mushrooms. Some of the medicinal mushrooms that my dad is taking are turkey tail and another supplement called AHCC that is derived from shiitake mushrooms. And that is used in cancer hospitals in China and Japan alongside chemotherapy to keep the immune system strong. And turkey tail has been shown in studies to help with cancer. So those are two things to look into. And aside from that, a blend like of chaga, reishi, cordyceps, lion's mane, shiitake, maitake, all of these mushrooms are so good for the immune system. So get your hands on as many as you can, and then start cooking with more mushrooms. So cook with shiitakes and maitakes, and you can cook lion's mane if you can find it as well. So just kind of start to build your little home protocol with some of those things and see how you feel. And, obviously monitor your progress. Cancer patients are living scan to scan, checking to see how the cancer progress is going. So if your oncologist has questions about this or isn't supportive, ask if you can just try it for one round of scans. I don't know whether it's 8 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever your scan protocol is. Say, what if we just took it for one scan round and just see the results? And if it's good or stable, keep going, and just of course, work with your doctor to make sure that it's safe for you.
That's great advice. Thanks. All right, Jenny, let's, are you ready for the lightning round of questions?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right. So, if the old you could see the new you, what would the new you say?
What would the new me say to the old me?
Yeah. So if you were looking back at the old you, knowing what you know now, what would that person say?
Oh goodness, probably trust the process, trust the unfolding of what's happening. Know that, it kind of sounds like cliche, but it's all happening for a greater purpose. So get through the challenges, keep going. I would just say keep going. It's so many things are going to unfold that you don't even know about yet, and that's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned, even through this whole process with, the COVID crisis and what we're going through, is we don't know what's next. And we have all of these ideas of how our life is going to go, but we don't know.
Yeah.
So just stay curious, keep showing up and keep taking that next right action. And, you'll get to where you need to be.
So good. Yeah, I love it. I totally agree. Who's someone in like the health or, self-development world that inspires you right now? Or someone that you follow?
So my two go-tos forever are Tim Ferriss and Elizabeth Gilbert. Those are like my two faves, forever faves. But actually recently someone who I've been watching a lot is Jason Silva.
Okay.
He is kind of this I don't even know how to describe Jason Silva, but he talks a lot about, consciousness and existence. And he's very into talking about psychedelics recently, which is something that I'm just very interested in. And he's sort of this philosopher, poet, biohacky type of guy that his videos are really awesome to watch. I'm just mesmerized by watching him talk, and there's all kinds of topics that he digs into, and it's like he gets these creative downloads that are very inspiring. So I've been really into his videos lately.
That's great. I've heard of Jason Silva, but I never really followed him, so I'm gonna have to check him out.
Check out his videos. It's really wild to watch him just kind of go off on a tangent, and the things that he will come up with in these creative sessions that he has are amazing. But yeah,
great. I'm a big reader. Other than your book, are there like 1 to 3 books that you would recommend that someone should read, or that's had the most impact on your life?
Yeah, this is well, I will say that one of the books during my writing process, one of the books that really, really helped me to stay in it, because writing a book is really hard. It's a lot of work, and it's a huge, huge commitment and it's very isolating, and all you want to do is be able to connect with other people that understand. So I'll say if you're a writer or if you're writing a book, there's this book called Still Writing by Danny Shapiro, and it is just all of these things about the creative process and the writing process. It was by my side every single day while I was writing the book. So I really highly recommend that for any writer. And then as far as other books that have impacted me, I mean, I guess most recently, I'll just go into the cannabis and mushroom realm. If you want to know more about the history of cannabis and medical marijuana, there's a book called Smoke Signals by Martin A. Lee, which is phenomenal, and it goes through the entire history, and it's so well written. My dad's reading it now and loves it. So if you're interested in that, go for Smoke Signals. If you really want to geek out on medicinal mushrooms and all the science behind it, I recommend The Fungal Pharmacy by Robert Rogers. It has like every study that's ever been done on mushrooms. It's kind of like a nerdy one to recommend, but I've been really into kind of nerdy books lately. So those are a few.
That's great. Thank you. And then you just finished a book, but I always like to ask people, are there any exciting projects that you're working on right now? I mean, you just completed it. The book obviously is a huge project, but is there anything else now that you're looking forward to?
Well, right now the book, just getting the book out into the world is my main project, and it's kind of just this project coming to completion, and I've been living and breathing this project for years. So it's kind of my main focus. But once the book comes out in 2 days, and once I've kind of gotten through getting the book out there, I am excited to get back to the blog, honestly, and to start to share shorter snippets about these things and little helpful tips, which I really got away from while I was writing the book because I needed to pour everything into the book. So I am looking forward to writing more, short content.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Any practices or hacks or anything that you like to do on a regular basis? Like, is it like gratitude journals people find, to be super helpful? Is there anything that you do on a daily basis?
Yeah, I do. I know we were speaking a little bit before about how I got into health coaching, which was through Julia Cameron from The Artist's Way. And one of the things that she recommends is writing in the morning. She calls it morning pages. If anyone listens to Tim Ferriss's podcast, they know about morning pages. So morning pages is basically just waking up and writing first thing in the morning, and just it's like a brain drain, just getting out all of your anxieties and worries and thoughts for the day. So if I start my day by just writing for 20 minutes or so, even if it doesn't make sense, even if it's just like I have nothing to write about, like eventually I get myself to a place where I'm really clear on what I need to do for the day. And usually I'll get a really good, to-do list out of it. So that's one thing that I try to do every day. And then as far as other things, I take magnesium every night. That's another thing I take with my CBD is magnesium, and that really helps to calm me down at night. And other than that, trying to get some form of movement in every day, whether it's walking or yoga or running or even just stretching and foam rolling. Those are part of my daily life.
Great. And then last but not least, Jenny, where can people find you?
You can find me, my blog is healthycrush.com. The book is called The Rebels Apothecary. You can find that anywhere that books are sold, but I have a page up for it at rebelsapothecary.com. It's a little bit long to say, so you can also go to healthycrush.com/book and find it there. And you can find me on Instagram at Jenny Sansouci.
Jenny Sansouci on the Hack Life. Jenny, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.